Okay, so welcome to this short little webinar on F9. I know that the people that are attending use F9 version 4 as opposed to F9 version 5, so this is going to be on F9 version 4's features. It should last about half an hour, and I'll just take you can, if you want to, speak to me as well over voice over IP if you've got headsets, but otherwise it's fine just to listen. So what is F9? I've assumed that the people attending use F9, so I'm just going to go through it very briefly in terms of what it is. It's a Microsoft Excel add-in which links to your general ledger. So it effectively links Excel to the information in your general ledger. You've obviously then got all the Excel tools available to you, so if you're a whiz on Excel, you can do charts and graphs and all that kind of thing. And F9 is called F9 because in Excel, when you want to refresh a spreadsheet, you press the F9 function key. And most people use it. The two key reasons for people using F9 are: eliminates rekeying of data, which means that if you want to have a particular number, sales number in a particular cell for a particular department, you can write the formula into that cell and effectively link that cell to some parameters in your general ledger. So it saves time in terms of entering information. And of course, the other big thing is just the time-saving aspect of it. Whereas you can, once you've got a report set up, you can change a month, or you can change a department, or you can change actual to budget, refresh the report, and the results are there. But effectively, most people buy F9 or use F9 for cell-specific reporting. So if you look at this diagram here, cell K27, that cell is just a function, that number in that cell is just a function of what F9 has been pointed to, and we'll go through those items, the GL parameters, a bit later. So that's effectively F9. It allows you to be cell specific, take your Excel templates and write F9 formulas into those Excel templates. How does F9 work behind the scenes? This may be a little bit of a complicated drawing, but I will explain it to you. Effectively, you have your accounting system on the left-hand side, and F9 can be linked to any accounting system. What we do is we extract data from your accounting system and put it into an F9 data mart. That information is held in the data mart, and users then use Microsoft Excel to pull information from that data mart into the Excel spreadsheets. What a lot of people don't know is that you can actually write information back from your spreadsheet to the data mart. So we have lots of customers who, their budgets, for example, never find their way into their general ledger, but what they will do is they will produce their budgets on Microsoft Excel, write them back into the F9 data mart, and they will then be able to report on those budgets. What F9 will never be able to do is write information from Excel all the way back into your accounting system. It just interacts with the F9 data mart. There are currently two versions of Excel, two versions of F9. People attending this webinar will be using the bottom one, F9 version 4, which is compatible with Excel 2003. 2000, 2003, and actually upwards as well. So you can actually use it on 2007 and 2010. The later version of F9, version 5, we're trying to get people to move on to, is only compatible with Excel 2007 and above. But as I say, this particular webinar is just going to be focused on the older version of F9. So what we're going to cover today is construction of the equals GL formula. Some of you may know how to create that formula. Some of you may have just seen these awfully long formula strings in Excel where you take a look at it and you think, goodness me, I'm not going to get involved in there. I'll just change this particular report. If I want a new report, I will just use my old report as a basis, and I won't have to understand this long formula string. So I'm going to show you how to create that formula string, but the good news is you don't actually have to learn it. It's a good idea to know how it's constructed, but you don't need to learn it off pat, because there are wizards in F9, leading on to the next one, report wizard, and various inquiry screens which will create that formula for you automatically. So we're going to be looking at, after the creation of that formula, report wizard, count inquiry, GL paste, something called chart, and then something called budget write back, which allows you to write information back to that data mart. And it's our experience that especially sites that have used F9 for a long time, people change jobs, the people who wrote the previous reports have left, and there's a bit of a gap in skills in terms of using F9 to create new reports. Because there are different people from different companies attending today, we're going to be using a demo database. And in this demo database, we have a general ledger, and it has 3 segments. I know it's not the same as yours, but the principle will be the same. Segment 1 is the location code, so it is designated by a single alpha character, A, B, or C. Segment 2 is then your nominal code, which is signified by 5-character number. And then segment 3 is your department code, which is characterized by a 3-digit number. So if I was to look at my sales accounts for Vancouver, for department A, in my ledger it would read A-30100-000, and that would be that account combination for Vancouver sales department A. Okay, the GL formula, which we're going to go through first, is a little scary to look at in the beginning. It's effectively a formula which starts with equals GL. It only works once you've got F9 installed, and it points to various accounts parameters. So we type in equals GL, we then say open bracket bspec, and what that bspec does is then we then point to the segments that we want to report off. So in your case it may be nominal code, department, project code, those sorts of things. In our case it's going to be segment 1 location, segment 2 nominal code, and segment 3 department code. Once we've pointed to those, we then reference the period we want to report on, the database we're reporting off, the year we're reporting off, and then the type of data we want. Is it actual, is it budget, etc., etc. So the best way to explain this formula, and I don't want you to think that if you don't get this formula, you don't know how to use F9, because most people just use the wizards to create this formula. But if you're looking at old reports that somebody else has created, it's quite nice to know how it was actually done. So if I go to my spreadsheet, and there are no formulas in the spreadsheet at all, we've got our database, which is demo. We've got our year, which in this case is 2010. We've got a type, which is actual. Our segment 1 is location A. Our segment 3 is department 100. And then we have got a nominal code of 3100 that we want to report on. And our particular month we're looking at is January. So because I've used F9 for about 12 years, I can do this quite easily, but I'll show you how it's constructed. Equals GL stands for general ledger, open bracket, type in our build specifier, bspec, open bracket, and then we reference our 3 segments. the important thing to do is we need to reference those segments in the same order that F9 stores them. So segment 1 is our location, and I put a comma in after I've clicked on something. Segment 2 is our nominal code, I put a comma in. Segment 3 is our department, and I close my bracket. And that's given me the 3 segments that I want to look at. The rest of it then is the balance of that formula you saw on the previous slide. So it's comma month, comma the database we're looking at. In your case it may be called GL or something like that. Comma year, and then the type that we're looking at. And that then returns a value to us which matches whatever we've pointed to. It's important to remember that these cells can be anywhere on your spreadsheet. They don't need to be on the top. They can be on another sheet. They can be down at the bottom on row 6000. They can be anywhere. But once I've done this, if I change any of the parameters, 2010 to 2009, and press F9 for refresh, the number changes to whatever it is. So if I change location A to location B and press F9, that number then changes. The issue we have with these formulas is often not so much creating them, but copying them around the spreadsheet. So if I wanted to expand on this report and put in another account code, I can't just copy and paste this formula down, because if I look at what this formula is pointing to, it's pointing to all of those cells that we're looking at. If I copy this formula down and press F9, I will get an error, because what's happening is we haven't locked in where this is pointing to. It's now pointing to one row below everything that it should have been. So what we need to do is let's firstly get rid of our errors. We need to anchor this cell in certain respects. So if I press F2, I know that my location is always going to be in cell B5, and if I press F4, I get the dollar signs that come in between B and 5. In fact, I get the 3 if I continue pressing F4. I get the different permutations of those dollar signs. But in this case, I know it's always going to be in B5. I know that my count code will always be in column A, and the row may change. So I've left, I haven't put a dollar sign before the row. B6, my department will always be in B6. My month is always going to be in row 10, because I want to drag this formula across, and the rest of my parameters are going to be fixed entirely. Which means when I then copy this formula down and press F9, I get a number in that cell. And in fact, if I was to copy my months across and copy my formula across and press F9, I'll get a report, and the dollar signs are in the right place. That's how the formula is constructed, but there are wizards to create these formulas very quickly. Thank goodness. So I'm going to create a new spreadsheet, and I'm going to show you the report wizard. And as I say, a lot of people who use F9 don't make use of these icons on top. We've got F9 icons here, and those are also accessible by clicking on the F9 drop-down menu as well. All of these icons are. So I'm going to click Report Wizard, and F9 opens up a little interface for me, where the first thing I'm asked to do is choose the database that I'm reporting on. And none of you you probably do have a copy of demo somewhere, but you'll be wanting to do this off your own database. And I click next. You can see now that on this report here, we've got a red bit, a red area, and F9 is asking us, what would you like to see as your rows on this report? And quite commonly, it's accounts that we want to see as rows. So I'm going to say, well, I'd like to choose, let's say, all my accounts that start with a 3 all the way to the end. So all my P&L accounts, effectively. I then move those across by clicking on this right arrow. Once I've done that, I can click next. It then asks me what I would like to see as my columns. So in this particular case, the first column I'd like to see is I'd actually like to see my account code described. So I'd say, well, I want my first column to describe the account code. And the dimension I'd like in my other column is, let's say, periods. January to June. And I move those across to the right-hand side. And I click next. It then says to me, what else would you like to choose? There are other parameters that you haven't. You've chosen your rows and your columns, but there are other parameters which you can choose as well. And I'd like to choose actual. Let's choose 2008. And let's choose all locations and all departments. So I click on OK, and I'm going to leave this blank, and I'm just going to run this report. And what you notice it does straight away by clicking on a cell, it's already put those formulas in for me. And I can use this as a basis for starting a report. My report may not want to look like this, but I can start using it as a basis for building up my own report. So if I was to say, well, in fact, I just want to have all accounts starting with a 3 asterisks, and in this cell I wanted all accounts from 40000 all the way through to 50000. In fact, I'm going to delete all the rows in my report because this is just a starter. Press F9, and I can already see that the report is looking more like how I want it to look. In this cell, I may want to say I want accounts 30120, 30150, 30160. Sorry, commas between them. Once I've got that there, I can simply just copy and paste my cells down, knowing full well that the formulas will work, and I can start creating my own bespoke report. So that's Report Wizard. I didn't have to have my periods up here. I could have chosen department, or I could have chosen location. So that's Report Wizard. The next one I want to show you is inquire and paste. Using this icon up here, little magnifying glass, F9 opens a dialog box for me here, and I can say, well, what would I actually like to, if I want to just get a balance of an account, I can say, well, give me Vancouver. I can choose a specific account, so let's choose sales, and I can choose a specific department. And if I say get balance, it goes and puts a balance in my cell here, and I can see what that account balance is. So that's a nice way just to do a quick inquire. But inquire and paste probably has a more important feature, which is if I quit out of it and go to this GL paste icon up at the top here, if I was to then click this GL paste icon, it actually pastes that formula in my spreadsheet for me. So, and once again, I have all my right dollars in place as well. And I don't need to think about my dollar signs, because if I just drag this across and press F9, it just works without me having to worry about absolute and relative cell references. if I wanted to create a report that wasn't by month, but by location, I could go back to my inquire and paste, and instead of creating my GL function by period, I can choose any of these. So I'll say, well, in fact, I want to choose it by location, and when I go back into GL paste, I now have locations up at the top here, which means I can drag, well, I can't really drag, but if I put location A, B, and C across the top, that report then works. And the same thing, if I was to start putting accounts down at the bottom and just copy and paste my formulas around, that report would just work. So Report Wizard and inquire and paste are used quite often. So that's some of the formula side of F9. The other thing that F9 that isn't used very often and is quite powerful for being able to have a quick look at the information that is contained in your databases, especially in large F9 databases, is this feature called chart. And what chart does is it doesn't give you formulas, it doesn't give you cell-specific reporting, but it effectively takes a dump of the information in your database for you to look at. So if I click on chart, this dialog box opens over here, and I say I would like to look at demo, I would like to look at all my periods, year 2010, my currency is just going to be home, and let's have a look at actuals. I've got some options up here to include the description. I can put my segments in separate columns, which I quite like to do, but if I click on find, it goes away and finds all the records in F9 that match what I've just chosen. And if I say quit, I can then simply just right click and paste all that information to a spreadsheet. And this then tells me for every single segment, because I put asterisk there, which is a wildcard, for every single segment, it goes and puts down the balance I have for obviously every single account. So that's my segment 1, that's my segment 2, that's my segment 3, and it's a nice way to actually see what's available to report on in F9. It may be a fairly large dump of information that it takes out, especially in some of your cases, because you're dealing with live with your own information. It's not just a demo database, but it's a great way for understanding what's in F9. There's two more features I'd like to show you. If I return back to my report that I created in my report wizard, where I've just got 3 asterisks in there, F9 is also used to drill down, and a lot of people I know use this, but I'll just quickly cover this so that you can get an idea of what it does. If I have a balance here of, I think that's about 1.4 million, if I click on my drill down icon, I can drill down on that balance by any of my account segments. So if I choose my GL segments, if I choose account and say drill down, that 1.4 million, it will tell me what it's made up of in terms of which accounts make up that 1.4 million. Remember, we had 3 asterisks in there, so it's giving my accounts there. I can also drill down based on what locations make up that 1.4 million, and I can see it's made up of these 3 locations, or I can choose a department to drill down on. The important thing, though, is for ad hoc reporting, it's quite easy for me. I have a send to the clipboard button here. To send this to the clipboard, right click on my spreadsheet somewhere and just paste it in. And I then have the analysis of that 1.4 million. Used quite often where an account balance looks a bit iffy or fishy, and you want to actually go and actually look at what comprises that amount that I have reported on. What F9 also has is the ability to drill down to transactions as well, and some people use F9 for transaction reporting, some people don't use F9 for transactions reporting. So if I was to look at a particular department and I looked at my petty cash account, I can drill down on this as well, but I can also drill down on transactions, and in this case we don't have any transactions on this particular demo, but I'd like you to do that where on your F9s to actually see whether you actually do have transactions in your database, but it will give you a list of the transactions that make up that particular balance. And the same thing we can send to clipboard and paste it in some way. So finally, something which is hardly used at all, but is extremely powerful, which is something called budget write back. This is a report I created out of F9, and I've assumed that I want to put numbers into this report. There are no F9 formulas on the yellow bits. It's simply just a data entry area. I can put numbers on here, and I can use a little known formula. Let's move this across here, called budget write back. It's exactly the same as the formula I took you through before, except that it has a W before the GL, and it also references an additional cell, H14. What I'm saying on this formula is I'm just going to F9 it quickly, take the number in this cell, put it into my write back area, and I have told F9 which data type I wanted to write back to. So at the moment it's writing back to forecast. If I press F9, it actually writes that information back from Excel into the F9 data mass, which means that if I then went into something like accounts inquiry, I now have a forecast data set in that accounts inquiry. If I was to change this to forecast 1, press F9, the next time I went into account inquiry, oops, let's just open this up. I've now got a forecast 1 data set to report off. So it's quite nice to use F9 to be able to consolidate these. So you can imagine if you had 100 departments and 10 locations, your budget holders could fill in a spreadsheet, send it back to you, you could write it back into F9, and when you did a report, an actual versus budget report, that information would be there for you to look at. There is an F9 training course which we run, which is just one day, called F9 Fundamentals, which takes you through all of this stuff in quite a bit of detail. I've just covered a few items on here which I was hoping to to entice users to use, so that F9 could become a more useful tool for you. But as I said, we do have an F9 training course which only takes a day. We work through about 20 examples in a particular sitting. Everybody has a computer, and it's just very much a hands-on environment. So it is now 32 minutes past 10. So I think what I'll do is I'll leave it there, and if you would like to ask any questions, please do so, either if you've got voice over IP or just on the chat on your NetViewer panel. So I'll wait about 5 minutes and see if there's any questions that you have.